Good to see so many of you here. We hope this is going to be an entertaining and informative session. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name's Tom Pickerel. As you heard, I am the Global Director of the Ocean Programme at the World Resources Institute, which is an international think tank that works on a variety of issues. Obviously, my issue is the ocean. We have offices around the world, including in India as well. So we've got a super panel for you today. And what we're going to talk about is the fact that climate change has brought both new opportunities and pressing challenges to the maritime world. Obviously, on one hand, it's created the possibility of new shipping routes, for example, the Northern Sea route and the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. And that might well offer opportunities and increase efficiencies. Meanwhile, it may render other shipping routes less reliable. Drought affecting the use of the Panama Canal is one example. You can imagine the issues that would cause. There's clearly a need for greater diversification in routes and much more climate resilient infrastructure. And I think resilience is something you'll hear a lot about. And for this, the need is only going to increase with time. So this panel is going to aim to provide insights into how maritime trade is evolving in the Anthropocene era and examine the need for strategic investment, technological innovation, and international cooperation. So how we're going to do this is I've got three penetrating questions that I'm going to be giving our panelists. They're going to be offering their thoughts on that. And then after about 40 minutes, we're going to offer it over to you, so any Q&A that you may have, and then we'll wrap it up, possibly if we have time, with a take-home message from each of our panelists. So I hope that sounds good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the first question to Michael, and then we'll walk down the panel, and then we'll start with the second question with Mohammed and walk back. So that's what we intend to do. So for each question, you're going to hear a variety of answers. So we'll kick off with Michael C. Huang, who's the Senior Research Fellow, Ocean Policy Research Institute at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation in Japan. And so the first question we'll kick off with is, are the effects of climate change already visible in the private sector's bottom line? And how has it reshaped or redirected investment efforts and expansion plans?
Thank you. It's like a great pleasure to be here. Well, at the beginning, it's great pleasure to be in Mumbai. I heard that people only come here for three reasons. First, trade. Second, Bollywood. And then third, critic. And now I think everyone coming here for the oceans. So, regarding this transition about technology, I think this world is really connected with Japan. Especially, Japan is a great, a lot of logistic country. I would like to say that this action has been prepared and then done through the shipping industry, technology, as well as finance. Let me give you an example that in 2018. The Japan NYK Nippon Yusen Line, it's a shipping company. They issued the world's first green bond on the energy, eco-friendly decarbonization transition for their shipping. They issue 10 billion Japanese yen. So that means that for the shipping globally, the shipping company needs to take the first action. They need to make set plans using the technology transformation and then for the decarbonization for the global trading mechanism and mapping. So that is the first step for the technology. Another way, especially for this part, is for the community-based approach, not just for the large company. From the community-based leads, I would say that the blue carbon is very important. It's very scientifically because you need to estimate the carbon credit from many kinds of the seaweed, kelp. So the Japan Blue Economy Technological Association, in short, JBE, they already developed the methodology in the estimating the carbon credits on the seaweed. So it will help all the technology and all the community-based approach to detailedly restore and conserve the ocean through restoring the coastline through planting, restoring the seaweed. So these two are the kind of technology from the mega point or the community base that we think this green transformation from Japan. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to hand over now to Jasmine Bascom, who is the Policy and Government Engagement Manager at the Global Maritime Forum. And same question to you, Jazz.
Thanks so much. And it's great to be here on such a varied panel. Maybe I should just first caveat the Global Maritime Forum. Our focus is on the decarbonization of the sector and also on the human sustainability angle. So making the lives of those seafarers better and improving the working conditions. So that's kind of how I'm going to approach the questions today. I think probably worth acknowledging the fact that the effects of climate change are already being felt at the personal level. And some communities around the world are experiencing climate breakdown more severely than others, and it's exacerbating existing inequalities that are prevalent around the world today. So I think it would be a little bit foolish to think that industry players, however many rungs up, aren't also experiencing those same issues. The climate question is visible in the decisions of the shipping sector, whether that be the financial decisions, operational, strategic. It's affecting route reliability, safety, and it's also bleeding into the decisions, investment decisions made around fuel switching, for example, and also port infrastructure. I think port infrastructure disruption alone is estimated to account for billions of US dollars in the future related to climate disruption because of potential damage or lost trade flows. But we know that capital is being redirected. Companies are currently prioritizing low and zero emission fuel technologies. They're pursuing dual fuel vessels. And they're also looking at retrofits rather than expanding conventional assets within the fleet. And we've seen some real progress in recent years from industry. I've got a couple examples. Maybe I'll just reel a few off. One is the opening of the first commercial scale methanol plant in Denmark, which was opened earlier this year. Over 300 order placements for methanol capable vessels. And we've also seen successful demonstrations of ammonia bunkering in places like the Port of Singapore, in China earlier this year. And maybe just the final point I'll make on this question is around the energy transition writ large. I think over the past couple of years, there's been a real shift because of clean technology tipping points that we've seen take place in other sectors. So the cost of solar PV has fallen by 99% in the last decade. The cost of batteries has plummeted similarly. So there's a real opportunity. Essentially, we now have proof of concept in other energy sectors that they're not only viable from a technology perspective, but also from an economic perspective. And those early first movers can really reap the financial benefits of moving first. So we need to seize that opportunity in shipping.
Thank you very much. And it does sound like there's lots of opportunities there. Handing over to Tina Jutton, who is an advocate for climate change, mitigation in the blue economy, but also UNESCO Youth Fellow for Peace in 2025. And Tina was also a former Member of Parliament in Mauritius. So same question to you, Tina.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say I really appreciate what Michael and Jasmine already shared. And coming to the question, before just addressing the question, I would like to say that I would address it from a SIDS point of view, being from Mauritius, which is a small island developing state. So for those of you who don't know Mauritius, it is like a little dot in the Indian Ocean. So we are just around 1,979 square kilometers by land. But our EEZ, which means our exclusive economic zone, is the 5th largest in the world. And we have around 2,000 acres on the southeast coast, which is really designated to be marine protected areas. And we have 2.3 million square kilometers of a sea. So we are surrounded by what we say the blue. and advocating for the green. So that's exactly what I'm here for today. So I'd like to say that to respond to the first question, that yes, we are very affected, and as I said, especially very threatened by what's happening. We cannot say that climate change is like a distant threat anymore. We are living it every day. Be it, especially for Mauritius, I can tell you, be it in terms of rising temperatures, be it in terms of coral reef restoration, coral bleaching. And we have seen even how the habitats, livelihoods are being affected. And also in terms, if I speak about for maritime trade and shipping, we are witnessing the urgent need for what we call readaptation. And yes, I also wish to say that despite being small in size, Mauritius is actually very strategically positioned because if we look at the trade routes, as mentioned in your introduction, so with what's happening with in the Red Sea and everything, so Mauritius, because it connects the Indian Ocean and being in the Cape of Good Hope, it connects Asia, Middle East, and even parts of Europe and America. So there is actually from 2023 a huge increase in demand. So for rerouting of ships, stop vessels, bunkering, and however, we are underutilizing our capacity. And this is mostly because, not because of a lack of will or lack of vision, but mostly because of lack of financing, collaboration, and proper expertise, which I hope to come, I hope to expand and explore a bit more in the second round with potential collaborations. But I want to say that yes, for private sector investment, the private sector in Mauritius, if I focus just national level, they have seen the need to readapt. And in terms of even collaboration with government, with NGOs, the collaboration mechanisms are being set in place. I would say the goodwill is here. And just that we do need more collaboration and expertise, as mentioned. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we certainly will come on to collaboration. Right, I hand over to Roberto Danavero, who is Professor of Marine Ecology at the Polytechnic University of Marche in Italy, but he's also president of the Pact with the Sea for the Earth.
So thanks, Tom. As a marine ecologist, I really appreciated the opening of the Minister of Ports, Shipping, and Waterways yesterday, because it pointed out the need of expanding maritime transportation along with taking care of the marine ecosystems and the biodiversity. And I think that this should be a kind of lighthouse for all of us, because too often we speak about, green whatever, but we really do very little about that. In that perspective, the climate change is calling for a special effort. We might say, I'm from the Mediterranean Sea, and Mediterranean Sea is a small sea, less than 1% of the oceans, yet it probably anticipates most of the problems we're facing in the future decades worldwide, together with the Arctic Ocean, by the way, as climate change in the Med and in the Arctic is getting much faster than everywhere else. Just to make an example, last year in 2024, the heat waves that were hitting the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea were so strong that still the complete deformation, the complete collapse of the ecosystems, did not recover, posing threats to the management of local resources. And I'm looking to that perspective, especially for the small islands that are, depending so much on the goods and services that are provided by the marine ecosystems. And surface temperatures reaching 34 degrees in the Red Sea, 31 degrees in the Mediterranean Sea. That means something that's unsustainable for even the most adapted. So there was a word that was very important for us, adapting to climate change. We still are failing, and we might have some plans, but we don't put any real effort to face the real impact that we're facing the climate change. On that perspective, therefore, the melting ice in the Arctic are offering opportunities for trade, but what is the risk that the climate change poses for the function of ecosystems that are changing their productivity, for the risk of collision accidents? We know that the stress posed by climate change is making more vulnerable all marine ecosystems, especially in some areas. So we should look with that perspective also to the future of climate change.
Thank you very much. And just the sheer energy needed to heat seawater to that level is incredible, and it just demonstrates the challenges we're facing here. Thank you for that. So last member of our panel to answer the first question is Mohamed Abdel Samir, who is the Director, General Administration for Climate Change Risk Studies in Egypt. So we're going to ask you this one, Mohamed, and then we'll ask you the second question straight afterwards.
Okay, thanks, and I would like to extend my gratitude for being here today, presenting our experience in this regard. Actually, as my colleague Tina confirmed that the effects of climate change are starkly visible. Climate change is no longer a future risk, but a present-day cost driver, directly impacting corporate balance sheet and strategic planning. If we are going to classify the different impacts of climate change, we can, in the maritime sector, we have different aspects like the infrastructure damage, the operational disruptions, and also cargo loss and increased costs. One of the examples that you mentioned in Panama Canal, due to severe climate change fueled drought, the Panama Canal Authority drastically reduced daily transits from a normal 36 to as low as 24 in late 2023, and this created a massive backlog. On the Egyptian context, the Suez Canal Authority, it was like a double-edged sword. So while some traffic diverted from Panama to Suez, providing a short-term boost, but the crisis was a stark warning, and it demonstrated the vulnerability of all checkpoints to climate shocks. So the Suez Canal Authority aggressively invest in its own climate resilience to avoid a similar fate. This is my short answer for this first question.
No, thank you very much. And that's some very impactful examples there. And I think we all know the bottlenecks that these two canals have, and we've seen that with the Evergreen blockage as well. So staying with that, Mohamed, you've given us some examples, and I'm going to ask the rest of the panel for further examples of how increasingly frequent extreme weather events have affected the safety and reliability of global shipping routes, but also what are the cost implications of these impacts for shippers?
Actually, extreme weather is becoming a primary operational hazard, disrupting schedules, endangering crews and cargo, and driving up insurance costs also. One of the examples for statistics in this regard, that the number of weather-related shipping incidents is rising. One study by one of the reputable insurance companies checked that more than $2 billion in losses have been attributed to weather-related events in recent years. For example, hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, the cyclones in the Bay of Bengal, and unprecedented windstorms in the Mediterranean can force port closure, rerouting, and delays. For example, in December 2023, a powerful storm in the Mediterranean forced the temporary closure of Piraeus port in Greece and caused significant delays of vessels approaching southern European ports, disrupting just-in-time supply chains. Regarding also the cost implication, the hidden tax of climate change, like bunker fuel, rerouting around bad weather increases voyage time, burning more fuel. A detour around the Cape of Good Hope instead of using the Suez Canal can add $10 to to 14 days and over cost of $1 million in extra fuel per vessel. Also, the insurance premiums increased in high-risk zones, including areas prone to extreme weather events. This is a direct operational cost increase. Thank you.
Wow. So an extra $1 million by having to go around the Cape.
Yes.
It's incredible. Roberta, same question.
Yeah, it's a difficult question because it's difficult to anticipate what we are facing under light of a multiple evidence that climate change is posing serious risks, not just for maritime transportation, but for all marine infrastructures. Think about oil and gas platforms and commuting vessels, approaching them, coastal infrastructures, ports. Now we are planning ports and piers that are much taller than in the past, and much stronger. Spend a lot of money for making more robust towards the rough seas and other conditions. And the risk of oil spills, accidents are getting higher, with implications in many ways, also for the insurances and whatever. So this means that it is important that we look at these factors as a potential threat also for a sound and eco-compatible activities, because jointly with the extreme events, we are facing the case of more vulnerable ecosystems. So the impact of those events in stressed ecosystems might be much higher, and we're still facing many cases of spills and accidents and so forth that might further increase in the future. I was just making the chances of the accidents and the wrecks in the Mediterranean Sea, which is a small sea, as I said. More than 4,000 wrecks are lying on the sea floor and on the deep sea floor of the Mediterranean Sea, just big, large vessels, those shipping vessels. So just to give an idea of the density of wrecks we might have in a very trafficked sea, as the Mediterranean Sea, through which is passing actually approximately 25% of the global maritime transportation. But in the future, this might be the case for many other maritime routes. So it's difficult to provide a quantitative estimate.
No, thank you. But you're right to note that the costs go beyond just the costs on shipping as well. Tina, any thoughts from Sid's perspective on this?
Definitely. So as my two colleagues here rightly mentioned, this affects the whole world. But yeah, especially for SIDS and for Mauritius, we are typically affected by two main things. One is, as I mentioned earlier, rising sea levels. And second, we are very much affected by cyclones, flooding, and sometimes lack of rainfall also causes droughts, severe droughts. So the areas are very much affected. And these affect, for instance, as I mentioned earlier again, coral, how the coral reef live in the natural habitats. So there is coral bleaching. There is also acidification. And of course, with these extreme weather conditions, the shipping routes are also affected, because the ocean current is also something that can alter the route of the shipping vessels and also damage the shipping vessels. So it has a lot of implication, not just in terms of our ecosystem, but also in terms of cost. And now, of course, if ships, the vessels need maintenance, need repair, it also means it affects, for instance, their schedule of arrival. If they have delivery cargoes, this is affected. And there are also cases where there is loss of cargo at sea, and there is rising risk insurance premiums, and all this is completely interlinked. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Jazz, I'm guessing this is one of the priority areas for the Global Maritime Forum.
It is, but I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on weather patterns, so maybe bear with me. But I think my other panelists have summarized better than I can some of the cost implications. I mean, we all know that insurance premiums will rise, delays, repair costs, everything that's already been mentioned. I think there was one point I wanted to make in regards to safety, which is there's a cost here that maybe no one is able to measure, but is probably and should be regarded as higher value, and that is the physical well-being of those working at sea. We know that 90% of world's goods are transported via shipping. It's propping up the entire global economy, right? And this is done by almost 2 million seafarers. But we know that working conditions for those people working at sea are already inadequate. There's a projected shortfall of 90,000 seafarers by 2026, that's next year. So we have a major problem for the sector without being able to attract and retain new talent. That's not just going to have global ramifications, major ramifications for global trade, but the safety concerns around rising sea levels and the impacts of climate change, all of the issues I've just mentioned will only be compounded if those impacts are to worsen, and if life at sea is viewed as an even less desirable and attractive career.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we're seeing the same in fisheries, where as fish stocks are moving both poleward, they're also moving offshore, and we're seeing coastal boats who are used to fishing in coastal waters having to go further and further offshore, and the the safety issues are considerable. Michael, what are your thoughts on this question?
Well, thank you. Well, climate change is a disaster. Well, I also teach in the university. People call me disaster teacher because I teach disaster. So actually, according to the statistics, Japan is actually well known. We are an encyclopedia of disasters: earthquake, volcano, flooding, everything. And now, according to the statistics, the meteorological disaster cause has been overtaken the tsunami and then the earthquake, because Japan suffered the increasing of a sea temperature more than any country, more than average. That means, usually we have rainy season and sometimes we have typhoon season, but what if they two combine? So we have long and strong tropical storms. And especially during the pandemic, people cannot go out or to evacuate. So that is really a compound disaster. So there should be more solutions toward this kind of changes. And this solution can also be applied to any other many countries, especially for small developing countries, because they are more fragile on that. So back to the financing for this solution, I would like to propose the blue impact finance. Means that the ocean financing for ocean for innovative solution, especially for startup. For example, during I believe the Mauritius or Madagascar or even Japan experienced the blackout of a typhoon. So blackout, it doesn't mean that we don't have enough electricity. It just means the disruption about the power line. So we need to have a smaller scale of power generation. So in Japan, there are some ventures invented typhoon wind farm, especially strong in the type resilient in typhoon. And also for the island country, that we should use the tidal power. It's small but very resilient, that kind of power. So in order to do that, we should pool the financial institution to support this innovative startup with the impact on the ocean and improve the resilience. So I think that is the point that for everyone should think about this pool risk and then blended finance.
Great, thank you very much. So we're on to our last question before we open it up to you all. And it's about collaboration. What collaborative actions should key stakeholders undertake to mitigate and adapt to the climate-driven disruptions facing maritime trade or other issues? And maybe I could just go over to Tina first, just because I know that collaboration was an area that she was particularly interested in, and then we'll dot around the panel to keep you all awake.
Thank you. I'd just like to quickly jump to what Michael just said. Very interesting idea. Indeed, we all face the blackouts, for instance, when there are cyclones, etc. And nowadays, we are also trying to consider like the alternative ways to generate electricity, and in a, as you say, in a green way. But maybe we can collaborate, and that's exactly where I come to the question now. So if I focus for SIDS, for Mauritius specifically, I would like to state for example of an oil spill which happened in Mauritius, which was coincidentally in my constituency at that time, where I was an elected member of a parliament. If you guys had heard about it, it was called the Wakasho oil spill, which was featured on the BBC everywhere, where the blue, beautiful sea of Mauritius was seen as completely dark and completely covered. And I would like to say here, this is where I saw collaboration in action, where we didn't have an oil contingency, preparedness plan, really. Like, it was announced and people were working on it, but maybe that's where they didn't see that, as you say, disaster can happen anytime. And that's a lesson learned the hard way. But that's where we saw communities coming together, both local level, from communities meaning fishermen, work, like housewives, children, to professionals, experts, marine experts, and to international collaboration. So we got help from a lot of countries, including Japan, UN, India. We had marine. We had professional divers coming from India. We had even so much help coming in, like voluntarily, on a voluntary basis. And if you looked at the sea coast of Mauritius during the oil spill, it was just an example of what happened when there is a crisis. It was a beautiful example of solidarity, I have to say. I witnessed it myself, going to clean the beach and going to clean our sea, our, as you say, this is our prize jewel, and it really aches when you see your sea like that. And but what really warmed my heart was to see everyone coming together, irrespective of titles, of position. Everyone was coming to clean the ocean, to clean the reefs. And here, I would say, in terms of a small island developing state, what we lacked first was expertise, which we got through collaboration, and of course support. Second was financing, and because a lot of local communities were really affected, like the fishermen I mentioned earlier, they had no livelihoods for a long time, and we had the government and some private institutions coming together to give them like a kind of compensation measures for wage. And of course, for the oil spill, the shippers, there was the insurance company getting into it. But most importantly, if Mauritius wants to continue to exist, because it is an existential threat, climate change, I would say that although our green gas emission is relatively very, very low, we are adhering and committing to the Paris Agreement, to the Sustainable Development Goals, and we have put in place a lot of mitigation measures, and even come up in Parliament with what you call a climate change bill. We have a lot of measures, for instance, like decarbonizing, and I like the idea of what Jasmine said earlier. This is these are all on our policy papers, but what we need in action is the people to drive it, as one, and second, the right collaborative measures to make it happen. So before ending, I would like to stress the importance of, because as Roberto also said earlier, we heard a lot about for climate change debates for more than a decade, and even the need for financing from the developed countries. But it is a fact, it is in our face. They have failed to deliver the promise. And we are not likely to see the 2030 agenda coming to life if we continue taking it lightly. So I think this is where it is important for all the agencies to come together, be it government, be it NGOs, be it academia, researchers, be it voluntary or professionals, to come together and to make things happen. And so I'd just like to end here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Jess, do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, maybe just
Jazz,
to build on
sorry.
that point, I thought that was a really interesting one, and I fully agree. I mean, maybe if I take it up a level, just to focus on the decarb angle that I was bringing in earlier, I think we have to remember that maritime is in this quite unfortunately named bucket of hard to abate sectors, which is a little bit of a negative way of looking at things. But it's because it has long asset lifespans and really, really interconnected supply chains, meaning that there is a risk of carbon lock-in and stranded assets. And the real challenge with decarbonizing maritime is the green premium that exists for the zero-emission fuels. So there's an opportunity for policymakers to act, and they need to do so this decade. So in the next 5 years, to ensure that those zero-emission fuels can one day outcompete their fossil fuel counterparts. If policymakers don't act within the next few years, there's not going to be an e-fuel market in the 2040s. So we need to get the enabling environment right, and that can be done at the international level, collaboration at the global level, for example, via the shipping regulator, the IMO. We had a bit of a setback a few weeks ago in London at the MEPC extraordinary session where the net zero framework was not adopted. But that delay of 1 year is really an opportunity for us to regroup. And I think that brings me on to my second point, which maybe builds on what you were saying around the exploration of new partnerships and the forging of new alliances. We need to make sure that the brunt of adaptation costs aren't falling on the most vulnerable. They're not falling on emerging markets and developing economies disproportionately. And so I think there's something to be said for maybe thinking about how you establish new trade routes, forming new coalitions of the willing to try and make the sector a little bit more resilient, particularly in the current geopolitical landscape with all the trade turmoil that we're seeing. One of the ways that this is already happening in the shipping sector is through green and digital shipping corridors, which are growing in number each year. It's essentially a trade route where everyone agrees to use an e-fuel of some kind and creates a kind of corridor through the world for that trade route. And we, at the Global Maritime Forum, are about to launch our annual progress report on green shipping corridors, which is going to show that the number of these corridors is rising. There's now over 80 in the world. And I think the concept was first introduced back at COP26, which is only, 4 years ago? So that's pretty exponential change, I'd say. And an increasing number of those corridors are also being led by or in partnership with countries in the global south. And so it should be a priority for everyone in this room and in this building to engage with those emerging markets, not just from a just and equitable transition perspective, but also because of the associated opportunities around fuel production, fuel use, and fuel export. There's a real economic opportunity for these countries to position themselves at the forefront of this e-fuel development.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Michael, the Sasakau Peace Foundation is well renowned for its foundations, for its collaborations. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And then following up, thanks for Tina's echo on the statistics. I now feel I'm a good disaster. So the Sasakau Peace Foundation takes the ocean the top priority for its core approach. And we even have a department of island nations departments to tackling solving the problem. So I think both Jasmine and then Tina mentioned that for stakeholders to academia to meet together regularly, and then also need to form the working group that will complete this ecosystem to run. And also, sometimes it's very delayed for the technology implementation and commercialize. We need to speed up the speed well, starting from the small scale and then commercialize it locally. So that means the action, especially taking the implementing trial from the small island country, if this will work, and then that means that this larger scale will also work. So that will needs the initial and then the impact finance to take this, what may be risk or maybe the innovative action on that.
Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Mohammed, and then we'll end with Roberta for the last word before we go to Q&A.
Okay, I will just take some words from my colleague Michael, since we share the same area of expertise of disaster risk reduction. Yeah. So I think that national strategies and sectoral action plans should take in consideration the disaster risk reduction requirements and climate change adaptation into the overall sustainable development strategies in the country. So this is why no single entity can solve this alone. So we have different roles of the government, the international bodies, the private sector, and the infrastructure sector also. So, for example, I think that on the national government and the international bodies, should focus on accelerating the implementation of green shipping corridors like zero emission routes and fund climate resilient port infrastructure. One more example from Egypt, actually the extreme weather in the Mediterranean will directly impact Egypt's key ports like the Alexandria and Port Said on the Mediterranean Sea, and this can create a domino effect of delays down to the Suez route. So that's why we are focusing on reducing the vulnerabilities and threats of the ports and the maritime paths to reduce the threats that can affect the Suez Canal Authority promise of transit reliability and the economic zones industries which rely on timely imports of raw materials and exports of finished goods face direct production disruptions and financial losses from these climate-driven port courses. So this is why we also talking about the roles of other stakeholders like the port authorities and terminal operators, the shipping lines and cargo owners, and also the financial and insurance sector. I think it is very important to develop like a sustainability-linked finance, which loans and insurance premiums are cheaper for companies that invest in climate-resilient vessels and operations. Thank you.
Thank you. And Roberto.
Thank you. You mentioned collaboration, what we can do together to mitigate these risks. It is certain we need more collaboration, and that collaboration has to be at the international level. In my opinion, under the umbrella of the United Nations, involving all countries, all small islands, all big countries together to find common routes and perspectives. In 2018, I wrote a paper on science along with a lot of colleagues saying that we are actually collaborating much more for space research and exploration for the oceans, and that is kind of paradox. We are spending much more money to search for life in the space than on the oceans, and this isn't exactly fitting with the needs we have and the priorities. So we should probably think a little bit better as exploring new collaborations. Among those, in the perspective of mitigating these impacts, a lot of hypotheses and proposals have been made to use the deep ocean to store CO2, to mitigate climate change or whatever. And another recent paper we published with Lisa Levy and I and others on science was exploring the threats and the consequences, because we are proposing engineered solutions without exploring the potential impacts over the ecosystem. So we know that oceans contain most of the solutions for a sustainable and peaceful planet, but we need to do more in that perspective We need more research to find the good solutions which are actually eco-compatible and sustainable without compromising the goods and services, the biodiversity, the ecosystem functioning, and so forth. And it's a long way to go, I might say, because if you look at the Ocean Treaty that was approved, I think, a couple of years ago, after more than 15 years of debate and contrasts, just for having a common treaty to protect the area, to the oceans beyond natural jurisdiction, of which we all have to take care. That is just given the sense and of the complexity and the difficulty of the way forward. But I think that conferences like this are really important to get together, to discuss together, and the initiative of the Indian government, I think, is very, very promising also for the opening words that are given a priority to the search for sustainable solutions.
Thank you very much. We have a panel with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, and they are there for you. So if you have any questions, we've probably got time for maybe 2 or 3. Great. Please say who you are and what your affiliation is. That often helps our panelists. So yes, we have a roving mic.
Thank you for a great panel. My name is Urvashi Sudhindra, and I have a slightly long-wound question. I hear everything that you said, and I think this room is not where we need to be preaching. We have the solutions, we are building on the solutions, and we're doing great work. But one of the challenges, which was probably not mentioned today, was that of overconsumption. And no matter how much we are trying to fix, as long as we don't stop the overconsumption and the unhinged capitalism that we've moved towards, in terms of the goods moving around the world, how exactly are we going to nip the problem in the bud in terms of decarbonizing the industries we want to decarbonize, move only essential products, move away from quick commerce or immediate deliveries, which are all adding up to the climate crisis?
Thank you. Who would like to answer that question? Yeah, please.
I am not an expert, but I want to say that it all comes to the way society is framed, and it all comes down to education and our thought patterns. So if we want to really try to change this shift from the, as you say, this consumerism way of life and the capitalistic way of living, I think it comes down to influence. And influence can be done through leadership. And leadership is not restrained to people who have titles or who are just government leaders. Leadership comes in terms of influence. Leadership comes from parents, from example, from leading by example, from inspired action, volunteerism. And of course, academia has a huge role by writing. Press has a role, a very important role, because nowadays in this era of new, which generation are we? I don't even know anymore, after millennia, X, Y, Alpha. So they are digital natives, and they're always on their laptops, computers, so they consume what is written, what is shared there, whether in images, whether in writing. I actually like your question because it gives a completely different perspective and makes you think and makes the world suddenly stop. Yeah, we're reading for all the solution, but what if we try to shift something from the other side? So yeah, I think it comes down to being informed. Once you're informed, it's simple. Like, instead of going to clean all the mess that is, for instance, from the litter and the pollution on the beach, it would be easier if, for instance, the kids are already taught since a young age not to do littering or to just keep the space clean where you are and respect others. I think basically it comes down to that. I don't know if any of our experts here has something else to say, but I just wanted to jump into that because I think it's very interesting. And I wanted to add something, if I may.
Yes.
There's another thing which I couldn't mention because the questions didn't allow for it. There's one thing that Jasmine touched earlier, which basically is about livelihood. It's about safety of the seafarers. And there's one thing in the opening panel yesterday by Samir, where the question came up like how to attract the youth, for instance. We are talking about capable workforce, and we are talking now, being a woman myself, I also want to see less of gender stereotyping, but how do you attract them? How do you change it? And it all comes down to education. And that's how you need to, I think that's why work at sea is not deemed to be like, like as we said yesterday, not sexy or not safe. And efforts have to be geared in that direction. And I think you have a very valid point. So all of us here have a collective responsibility to make it happen. Thank you.